Yes?
Is there anything in Puccini's correspondence as to why he was compelled to use saxophone? Is that part of it?
No, the question was, why did he use saxophones? Nothing specific about that. I think, you know, Puccini's operas all have a very distinct sound, and I think he's trying to find things that tap into a sound world. And I think that they were unusual enough, and they created a kind of an unusual sound for him, and they seem to answer, you know, at least that question, but nothing specifically where he talked about that. Now, you had a question, and then I think I want to make sure I'm not ignoring these folks over here. Yes?
I'm interested in how the opera was completed after his death. What was the involvement of the librettists following Puccini's death? And could you talk a little bit about how
Sure. Sure. Yeah, how was the opera finished? Well, so Puccini didn't finish it. He had his sketch material. After he died, his publisher and Arturo Toscanini, who was to conduct the premiere, realized that this work needed to be finished. And they began looking around for other composers who might come in and finish it. They eventually settled on a younger contemporary of Puccini's, Franco Alfano, who was the head of the music school in Turin and who had written operas before. At this point, essentially, the librettists are finished because they had written the text. Now, what Alfano did is, in the process of composing, he would cut certain lines of text out. But essentially, at that point, their job is finished. So he then takes these sketches that Puccini had brought with him to Brussels and needs to solve a problem, which is they're not complete. So how do you do that? He does what he can with what he's got. Where there are gaps in the sketch material, he writes his own music. He then gives this back to Toscanini and Ricordi. Toscanini says, this sounds too much like you and not enough like Puccini. And he makes him cut about 100 bars of music out. The original ending that Alfano wrote is, in many ways, quite different than what we hear today. In this performance, and in just about every performance of Turandot you'll ever hear, there's the big reprise of Nessun Dorma at the end, da 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 da, and the chorus is singing away. Well, in Alfano's original ending, both Turandot and Kaloff are singing at that point, and they're singing the words amor. It's a very, very taxing thing. It's very high and it's very loud, and we never hear it, which is unfortunate because it's actually kind of exciting. It's completely over the top. It's what I call a kitchen sink moment. I mean, it's just like everything is thrown in, but it's very exciting. It's very, you know, it's just like Hollywood at its best. But it's never done because this ending has sort of taken over. I want to make sure I get some. Yes, here. How did his estate get paid? That's a really good question. I think what happened is, and I don't know for sure, but I think that this all worked itself out through Ricordi. I'm not sure at what point he may have gotten some advance payment. That's a very good question, so I'm going to have to kind of punt on that one. But eventually, this matter was settled. Yes. Okay, yes, what Toscanini did, and this will have to be the last question. So there's a very famous anecdote about Toscanini at the premiere. Toscanini lays down his baton at the point at which Puccini had stopped writing music, and that would be at the very end of Liu's death scene. He lays down his baton, he turns around, and he says, at this point the opera stops because here the maestro died. Death is stronger than art. And there was a kind of a silence over the house, and everybody filed out. Toscanini refused to conduct the ending that Alfano wrote, even after Toscanini made him revise it.
Not nice. It's not nice.
You know, Toscanini was a very difficult individual. And he was very demanding, and he was involved in this, and he felt that it was most important to be faithful to what Puccini did. Okay. Toscanini did not ever conduct Turandot after that opening night. Then it was handed over to another conductor.
He didn't like
The
it.
interesting thing about that anecdote is that about a year prior to that, Puccini had some premonition that he might not finish this opera. And I read one letter where he said, I don't think I'm ever going to finish this. And he had been meeting with Toscanini, and I also believe there had been some representatives of Ricordi, his publisher there, and he said something to the effect that I don't think I'm ever going to finish this. At some point, someone will have to say, at this point, the opera stops because the composer died. Now, he wasn't forecasting his own death, I don't think, but that anecdote has become so associated with this kind of mythology of Turandot, and everybody likes to think that Toscanini said it on the spur of the moment, but there was at least some suggestion that Puccini said something about that a year earlier. So the upshot is that the opera was not performed in the Alfano ending at opening night, and then the revised ending was played later on, but Toscanini had nothing more to do with the opera. So I'm going to hang around here a little bit and pack up. If you've got more questions, I'd love to chat with you, and I will be here today, so feel free to ask me questions as you see me. Thank you very much.